What's going on, everybody? Thanks for checking out my channel. This is my son, super future producer Aurelio Tapia. We're going to work on what kind of drums, Aurelio?
Freestyle gated reverb drums patterns.
Freestyle gated reverb drum patterns. In the 80s, they were very popular. George Lamont, Shannon, etc. When you hear the drums, you're going to know what we're talking about. Usually there's an 808, but it's not just the dry 808. You have to have that gated reverb to get that classic freestyle sound. So we'll get into the process, and Aurelio will also take you into the process of how he made a beat. He's going to be doing a record with me, and he's producing the beats, and it's turning out really fire. Right. Straighten it out. Aurelio will also be showing us how he goes about making a freestyle track. We'll show all this and more coming right up. Alright guys, you know where this really started. In the 80s, it was Phil Collins. His smash hit In the Air Tonight really was the first iteration from what I've researched of these awesome gated reverbs. And this great show, Miami Vice, really iconicized these drums, as well as maybe Mike Tyson in one of those, what is that, the dude with the babysitter? I forget what the name of that damn movie was. Anyways, the gated drum was supposedly an accident in the studio, and it led to this great sound, this great 80s sound. You know who else did it? Was Tony Thompson, Chic drummer. If you remember the band Power Station, what a great band, what a great drummer, but his drums were gated as heck. Not that he needed it, but it really gave it that funky, awesome sound. Before Chris Barbosa, before Let the Music Play, before George Lamont, this Phil Collins guy really killed it on the skins with the gated reverb on his drums. But before I continue, I'd like to give a shout out to YouTuber Killstar. He had a really cool YouTube video on how to use this old school verb, and we used some of his ideas and settings for our freestyle gated reverb. Anyways, it is Shannon, and it is Chris Barbosa and Mark Leggett that produced this classic, which really has influenced freestyle to this day. These drums, there they are. That's the perfect version of the freestyle gated snare, and Aurelio is going to show you how he made it on his Logic Pro using Logic 10, using this old school verb plugin. Hope you enjoy. All right, I'm sitting here with Aurelio. What's up, Aurelio?
How you doing?
How you doing to your old man? All right, let's talk about those iconic drums. Let's go through the process of what you have to do to get those gated delayed reverb snare with that old school freestyle sound.
Okay, I'm gonna play you this beat, the basics of a freestyle beat. I may just have some chords, a hit, a bass, a kick, a hi-hat, and a lead. This is what it sounds like. It took me, okay, first 10 to 30 minutes. I have the snare with the reverb, of course. This is how it sounds. I have a hit, some keys, a bass, a lead, a kick, and a hi-hat. Or that's not it.
And let me interrupt you real quick, Aurelio. What do you think is the hardest part? Is it the lead? Is it the melody?
The hardest part is probably the chords, because if you don't have good chords, the whole track's just not going to sound good.
Okay, okay. So go ahead, Aurelio. Play us what you came up with, what, 10, 15 minutes tops?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
That's how it sounds.
That sounds
so
fire.
I'm going to break down into the snare.
Which let me interrupt you real quick. This is really one of the main things we're going to talk about. That gated reverb with that delay. Take us through that process, how you made that iconic sound.
Okay, first off, to start on the sound, I'm going to play it for you dry without any effects. Just sounds like this. Sounds fine, doesn't sound that good.
And what is that? That's that dry 808, right?
Yeah, it's a dry 808 snare.
Which is fine. The 808 is classic, but it doesn't have that epic sound, correct?
Okay, first I'm going to send it to a bus with using a reverb plugin. It's a free reverb plugin called oldskoolverb. The link's going to be in the description. To get the right preset, you just have to mute the dry.
Okay, so we're muting the dry and we're using the preset called oldskoolverb, right?
Yeah, it's a free VST.
Free VST.
Link will be in the description.
Link will be in the description.
If you need to copy the settings, just pause the video and copy the settings if you need to.
Okay.
It sounds like this now. So it sounds pretty cool, but the reverb is too long.
So that
first,
that decay, right?
Yeah, it's too long, so it's going to leak to
what
the
they
next
call,
one.
I'm sorry guys, this is a music term, a tail, right?
Yeah.
So when you hear the reverb, it keeps going and it might interrupt with the rest of the song, correct?
Yeah.
If it goes on too long.
So what you're going to add next is a noise gate.
So noise gate comes
It's a stock
next.
Logic plugin.
By the way, we're using Logic Pro. We're Logic Pro fans, and we've been using Logic Pro
Yeah.
for what, 2 years?
Yeah, around.
But this should work with many VSTs, and oldskoolverb should work with many VSTs or DAWs, right? I'm sorry, I mean DAWs.
Yeah.
DAWs.
So you're going to want to have the release around 110 milliseconds, the hold around 70.
So let me remind you, release about 108, 110.
Yeah, around that 100 range. It can go a little bit above, a little bit under. The hold around 70.
The hold's around 70.
The attack is only going to be around 3. The reduction going to be all the way down at negative 100. The threshold. So what the threshold does is it determines anything under the dB, the decibels you have it set, it won't play. So the more I bring the threshold down, the more reverb it will play. And keep bringing it down to how you have it, how you like. So I like it around the 75 range for this particular snare. And then to make the reverb sound bigger, I'm going to add compressor, another stock Logic plugin, change it to the Studio FET setting, put the ratio around 2, and the threshold around 24, and this is how it sounds.
And time out because our dogs are going crazy. We might have to edit it. If not, if you guys can't hear it, we're sorry for our crazy canines.
Okay, now to the pattern. Very simple pattern. Anyone can do this. It's going to be on the 2 and the 4.
So the snare is on the 2 and the 4. Simple pattern.
Now we're going to have to add the kick. You can use any kick as long as it's hitting hard, preferably like a 909 kick to an 808 kick, in my opinion. We actually got this kick out of a Freestyle sample pack. There's no really set pattern for the kick. It's almost a little bit similar to like a floor on the floor house pattern, but a little with more variation.
Right.
This is how it should end up sounding similar to this.
Nice.
Now, that's really all you need for drums, but it usually sounds better if you add a different percussion element, so I added this hi-hat pattern with a stock Logic loop.
That gives it the groove. It sounds nice.
That's how you make fire freestyle drum patterns. Now I'm going to break down the rest of the beat. To make chords, you have to have it sound kind of sad, melodic, a little bit cheesy. These are the chords. I usually like starting with the bass note and adding notes later. The basic chords are... Sorry, wrong note. That's the basic chords, but I took the bass notes, copy and pasted them down into the C2 octave and the C1 octave to add some bass. I took the highest notes, or the lead notes, or whatever you want to call them, and put them into a higher octave to make it sound more full.
So let me interrupt you, really. So basically, that's what your songwriter's gonna write to.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. So those of us who aren't musically inclined, go ahead.
For the preset, I used one of the first sound that comes up in the Purity VST.
So you use Purity VST as
yeah.
one of the ones.
It's a really good VST, especially for vintage sounding genres like synthwave or freestyle.
So when you say VST, you mean a virtual instrument for
studio
DAWs,
instrument,
right?
Yeah.
And it should work with different types of DAWs.
It works for all DAWs.
Great.
It's a cheap plugin compared to most of the more expensive ones, and it's a really good one. Here's a free plugin that you should, if you're trying to make a vintage sounding keys, you should add it to all of them. It's called Isotope Vinyl, 100% free. It gives a really dope vinyl feel. You can change.
So when you say, what does it give it? Like a little bit of
like
a more
a vinyl
compressed
feel,
yeah.
vinyl feel, like an old record.
An old record.
You can add like.
So it makes your product sound less digital, right? Is that really what it is?
More dust, make it sound like an old vinyl record.
Gotcha.
You can change here. It's a really dope plugin. I use it in almost all my beats, whatever genre it is. for the hits, this is how it sounds.
And all freestyle songs have those darn hits, right?
Yeah. I got these hits from a plugin called Expand 2. It's a really good, another cheap budget plugin if you're looking for plugins. It has all kinds of sounds, but I used it for the hits. I again added isotope vinyl to make it sound nice and vintage. And again, I added more reverb from the oldskoolverb plugin. Sounds really cool. Here's an analog bass. I use it with a stock retro synth plugin in Logic Pro X. It just follows the bass notes as the chords. Sounds like this. Lastly, I added a lead with another stock Logic sound. Scratch that, a purity sound actually, with isotope vinyl again. And to start out, if you're going to make a lead, it's usually best to play it out on your keyboard to come up with the idea. But for the bass notes of the lead, you want to follow the highest notes in your chord. So you can see it's following the high notes of the chord. And then you have to come up with a very melodic pattern. And it's best to come up with a very catchy, repetitive pattern. And altogether it sounds like this.
All right, young man. And that's you working on freestyle because your dad begged you to work on a freestyle track, right? Because you were making trap beats. You were making dope trap beats, and you're like, what is this? But you know what? You got the skill, brother. Thanks, Aurelio Tapia, for joining us and showing us the basics of how you made this freestyle beat, how you got those drum kicking, and we're going to see more of you in the future, right?
Yep.
Thanks, my dude.